Hello everyone. The topic I'll be covering in this video is new training technologies and modern methods in training design. Specifically, I will be discussing Section 2, Technology-Based Training Method Content Area Effectiveness, as well as Section 3, Experience with Modern Methods. We'll do a brief recap of the table of contents here. Section 1, we will get into the new methods of training, the advantages and disadvantages. Section 2, the effectiveness of each method in content areas. Section 3, experience with modern methods. Section 4, demographics and the influence and the selection of training methods. Section 5, the important training characteristics of effectively utilizing modern training methods. Section 6, high performance workplace. And then finally in Section 7, we discuss the similarities and differences between traditional and new training methods. So in Section 1, we review the new methods of training and the advantages and disadvantages. For example, computer-based training, CBT, online learning, e-learning, web-based training, distance learning, intelligent tutoring, simulation and games, mobile learning, and social media. So in Section 2, what I want to focus on here are the content area effectiveness for each of the methods. And in general, the number of content areas in which technology-based training can be used is limitless. A vast range of possible content areas will have different degrees of effectiveness, depending upon the actual delivery method chosen, the specific training topic, and the desired learning outcomes. To be used effectively for educational processes, technology-based learning must exploit the delivery system's key advantages. So, in that context, the content type and delivery method effectiveness will range with the content type attributes. So I got two examples here from one extreme to the other. In content type example 1, we have declarative knowledge content, which is very high, and tangible mechanics interpretation is low. So something where training content areas with higher degrees of transferring intellectual knowledge only may require less illustration, more commonly found in virtual worlds and simulations. So topics, content examples would be conceptual theory, ideology, ethics, specifically speech, psychology, knowledge-based learning, and the most effective technology-based methods for communicating these things could be teleconference, computer-based training, RSS, shared workspaces like Google Drive or SharePoint, or web blogs, things that don't require much illustration and pretty much conceptual information, cognitive information. In content type example 2, we have declarative knowledge content, which is low, and tangible mechanics, which is high. So this would be something where training content areas require a higher degree of illustration rather than narrative information. Transfer will benefit more from the use of methods capable of offering the graphical technology. So illustration. A picture says 1,000 words. I could tell you, but it's much easier to show you. So a content example would be any mechanical process, architecture that you have to lay out, form, function of physical action or performance, specifically painting or surgery or athletics, how to throw a football. You could say how to do that, but to show you would make much more sense. And that content type would be in this extreme of example 2. So The most effective technology-based method to deliver that would be computer-based training, web-based training, two-way video, virtual reality, methods with the ability for illustration. So in general, online instruction is more effective than face-to-face classroom instruction for teaching declarative knowledge, cognitive knowledge assessed using written tests. So determining that and knowing that the cost needs to be considered versus the desired outcomes. So in general, the methods that commonly cost more to implement contain more technology-based training methods that are less costly. So therefore, the investment of more time and dollars to build within a framework that is more readily reusable and more cost-effective may be applicable. So that's to say, you might want to have more robust solutions so that you can have all those embedded text files. But if you needed the ability for illustration, it's there. So that's the cost versus desired outcomes trade-off. When selecting delivery methods based on the required content areas, the desired outcomes and the correlation with the need for synchronous or asynchronous communication needs to be determined. So these are some items to consider. Location of trainees in space and time, number of trainees, frequency of trainees training, level of collaboration required, the necessity for subject matter expert input and review, frequency and detail of feedback, and also the priority of content area training. How important is retention? Is this onboarding orientation, or is this high skill, high priority work content? So depending on how you're going to train, or the content types that you have to train, will determine the cost and the desired outcomes that you're looking for. So many of these requirements will factor into the method selected for content delivery. As with most technology, the cost-benefit assessment will change over time with lowering technology costs, making more robust real-time methods more viable. What may be an expensive architectural and bandwidth restrictive method today may be a cheap and easy option in the future. For example, video conferencing, virtual reality, or even distance learning, interactive distance learning. But the bottom line, it's been proven that blended learning of both technology-based and face-to-face methods still provide the most effective overall method of learning. No matter which content area or technology-based method employed, integrating an in-person or synchronous element will increase the effectiveness. So the next section here that I'm going to focus on is an actual experience with the modern methods. And in this example, we'll be discussing web-based training. The most common method in general experience today is web-based training. So considering the multiple tools that technically fall under WBT umbrella, everything from RSS to social network technology, and of course distance learning, it really covers a broad spectrum of delivery methods. The ability to embed graphical and audio media and provide near real-time interaction at a low cost makes it a very common medium, all of which would not be as effective without the web. So CBT is great, but with the web, it really makes it a much more powerful tool. Specifically, the degree of transfer of training and effectiveness would be hindered without the internet. So as an initial transition enhancement from traditional in-person training and computer-based training, CBT, the web-based element can typically be easily integrated for repurposing the existing exercises at a low cost. So if you already have training built, the ability to transfer that into a web-based training material is pretty low cost and very effective. So situations where web-based training has been most effective. The content area examples are similar to real life applications possible. So uh, we want to be able to have something that is closest to what they're going to experience uh, in real life. That's when web-based training has been most effective. This is because far transfer is difficult for most people, and that's with any training. Uh, but learners need to see an opportunity for immediate application of their knowledge, and that's not necessarily at work where they need to apply it, but how to see it. So learners need to see an opportunity. So that training has to be uh, focusing on how they're able to see the opportunity. Um, they need to include automated direction to establish purpose, such as video instruction or menus based on uh, menu-based direction. In addition to the following, having large amounts of content accessible with a high degree of learner control provides the trainee with the ability to self-pace, self-sequence, for that matter, and explore areas of relation for a greater understanding. So we want to be able to have the instruction if needed, but a higher degree of learner control so that the trainee can actually dive in more if the desire is there or needed. Um, so they can follow along or they can engage in further discovery. Um, so for those that want more control, they can have it. It's also been most effective when uh, more detailed and graphically charged material is provided. Uh, the more interaction and meaningfulness is exuded. So, um, as mentioned earlier, a picture says 1,000 words, and in most cases, it can accurately transfer information better than the written word. Um, so we want to have as much media as possible where it can be used, and that makes it more effective. Hybrid abilities like YouTube exhibits the traits of an effective web-based training. So web-hosted video with the ability to collaborate and embed text hyperlinks to more resources increases the value of the training design in general. In addition to robust media with optional learner control, knowing some form of assessment testing to follow inherently increases the desire to learn. So having a pre-test and saying that we're going to have post-test in web-based training makes them pay attention a little bit more. Is a little bit more effective, which is easy to do with web-based training. It's no surprise that those with learning management systems that will typically contain web-enabled content that have been originally instructor-led, since it's low cost to repurpose into the web-based training material. And not only does the format of presentation work as an effective means of training, but the content is always accessible from anywhere and for as many people as needed across time, as long as it's supported. So it's a great tool and it's effective when these are met. Situations where it's been less effective, if the media is or the content has not been embedded, linked, or updated recently, so it's out of date or the link's broken, things like that. It impedes the learning process, and it's not accurately depicting the actual content area details if it's out of date. So make the content relative and timely, building off a constructivist approach to learning. E-learning is indeed traditional learning, must be perceived as relevant to learners to be mastered and retained. So if there's no proof of records retention or credit for completing training, that's another place where it has been less effective. So yeah, I went on and I did my training, but there's no proof that I completed it. So not only is some training necessary for the function of the trainee's job, but there's also training required of all employees in some cases, whether it's diversity or uh, any general skill that needs to be trained across the board. So having proof of completion known to the user and management will increase the likelihood the training is completed and be effective. There is no assessment of knowledge transfer, such as quiz or a test. So, like I said earlier, if they know that there's not going to be a quiz or test, um, the effectiveness might not be as high. So, trainees will pay more attention, and therefore, training will be more effective if the requirement for assessment is noted at the beginning of the training session. And that is the end of my section. I think I met the 10-minute minimum. I was going over a lot earlier, so um, that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.